I'm Anna Colletto, and this is Asked and Answered, a man-eater segment where we talk through your questions on recent issues. Today, we're answering a question from Cara regarding the Ukraine crisis. In October 2021, Russia began moving troops near the Ukraine border. By November, images via satellite and social media showed a buildup of Russian troops near the Belarus border. In early December, over 100,000 Russian troops were stationed outside of Ukraine. Russia then issued a set of demands to NATO countries. Demands that include limits on NATO troop deployment into Eastern Europe and a permanent ban on Ukraine ever entering NATO. The US and its NATO allies promptly rejected these demands, warning Russia of possible economic sanctions if military action continued. According to the Council of Foreign Relations, economic sanctions are the withdrawal of customary trade and financial relations for foreign and security policy purposes. They could be comprehensive, prohibiting commercial activity with regard to an entire country, or they may be targeted, blocking transactions by and with particular businesses, groups, or individuals. By January, Canada offered a $120 million loan to Ukraine and extended its military operations in the country. The U.S. deployed over 3,000 troops to Poland, Germany, and Romania in early February, placing an additional 8,500 U.S. troops on high alert. In the last 2 weeks, Russian forces have amped up. Satellite images show further developed shelters in practically every station in Belarus, Crimea, and Western Russia. So what happens now? Will Russia really invade Ukraine? Will the U.S. get involved? Why is this happening in the first place? And is this World War III? Let's just slow down. To answer these questions, we must look back to previous Russia-Ukraine conflicts. In March of 2014, Russian troops took control of Ukraine's Crimean region, eventually annexing the peninsula. 2 months later, pro-Russian separatists held a referendum declaring independence from Ukraine. The resulting violence between the Ukrainian military and these separatists has killed more than 10,300 people since April 2014. France, Germany, Russia, and Ukraine attempted diplomatic resolution with the Minsk Accords in 2015. These accords sought to bring peace to areas of Ukraine previously taken by pro-Russian separatists and bring political resolution to the region, but these efforts are still unsuccessful today. In addition to physical violence, Ukrainian citizens have also been subjected to several cyber attacks attributed to Russia. Since 2016, NATO has deployed 4 battalions to prevent further Russian aggression in Europe. In 2018, the U.S. imposed strict sanctions on Russian officials and companies connected to the Ukrainian conflict. Later that year, the U.S. approved the first sales of lethal anti-tank weaponry to Ukraine since the crisis began. So, with all that history in mind, it's clear that this conflict is anything but new. But what do these increased tensions really mean? Russia's motivation in this recent aggression towards Ukraine is still semi-murky. When asked about Russian President Vladimir Putin's motivations in a New York Times interview, Russian foreign policy analyst Fyodor Lukyanov stated, "The expert opinion I can authoritatively declare is, who the heck knows?" Much of this confusion comes from contradictory messaging out of Russia. After 2 days of talks with the U.S. in January, Foreign Minister Sergei A. Rybkov insisted that there was no reason to fear any escalation on the Ukrainian border, but that they simultaneously need a fast NATO response to their security demands. We do know that Putin harbors resentment against NATO's eastward expansion. This is likely why Russia sent such strict demands against such expansion earlier this year. Dmitry Trenin, the director of the Carnegie Moscow Center think tank, provides a possible explanation for Russia's military action. He said, "Putin assumes that Americans will pay attention only to that which concretely and immediately threatens them." So perhaps this action is a method of forcing the U.S. and its allies to seriously consider Russia's anti-NATO demands. The U.S. and its allies are certainly paying attention. On February 7th, French President Emmanuel Macron met with Putin in Moscow to discuss possible diplomatic solutions and compromises. While the U.S. rejected Russia's 2021 demands outright, Macron proposed several solutions not involving Ukraine becoming a part of NATO. One such proposal is the Finlandization of Ukraine, essentially paralleling Finland's neutrality during the Cold War, maintaining its independence and its democracy. On February 7th, U.S. President Joe Biden met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Washington. They discussed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Europe imports around 40% of its gas from Russia, and this natural gas pipeline would run fuel from Russia directly to Germany's Baltic coast. Nord Stream 2 avoids Ukraine and Poland, providing an alternative to the aged current system. It would also lower fuel costs and double the capacity of earlier pipelines. In a press conference after their meeting, Biden and Scholz declared that if Russia invaded Ukraine, the U.S. and its allies would shut down the pipeline, wreaking massive economic harm on Russia.
There will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
Biden stated, "If Russia makes a choice to further invade Ukraine, we are jointly ready and all of NATO is ready." On February 12th, the U.S. State Department ordered most American diplomats in Ukraine to leave the Kiev embassy. Biden called Putin just a few hours later. While the call was said to have been businesslike and primarily discussing diplomatic resolution, Biden warned that any invasion of Ukraine would result in swift and severe consequences to Russia. It's clear that tensions are rising, so to get expert opinion regarding what might unfold next, we spoke to Stephen Quackenbush, an associate professor of defense and strategic studies here at Mizzou.
Basically, I mean, it's hard to know for sure. I mean, I think it's a lot of posturing. I think that ultimately, I mean, Putin wants to restore Russia to its former glory of the Soviet Union and the Russian Empire before that. Putin wants to, if not actually bring former, parts of the Soviet Union, such as Ukraine, back into Russian direct rule. He at least wants to have Russian domination over them. I mean, I don't think Russia would fare very well. And I think that they know that. We never got that World War III between the US and the Soviet Union for a variety of reasons, but that World War III at this point would be between the US and China. I mean, Russia might be involved, but frankly, it's not going to be World War III unless China gets involved. And I don't think China is much interested in getting involved in something over Ukraine. I don't think Russia is interested in getting in a major war with the US over Ukraine either. Or that's part of why I think there isn't going to be a large war about it.
The crisis in Ukraine is multifaceted, quickly developing, and deeply rooted within long-running conflict in Eastern Europe. What happens next will not only affect the citizens of Ukraine, but could drastically shift the balance of economic and diplomatic power in the region. Over 100,000 troops still remain on the Ukraine border, developing their stations and weaponry as each day passes. Satellite images demonstrate just how much these areas have changed in the last few days. The situation in Ukraine is developing constantly. Understanding the true scope of the tensions requires decades of context and a keen eye on the news. This has been Asked and Answered. I'm Anna Colletto. Thanks for watching.